a speaker come to talk to you guys today. I'm going to introduce Mr. Zangara. Mr. Zangara is Miss Zangara's father-in-law, and he's going to set up this great opportunity for us all. He started a nonprofit organization that is the World War II Archives, and it's a great organization that's trying to give schools and veterans opportunities to share their experiences, and to they write books, and they are doing all of these things to get these great stories down so that we have them for now and for the future. One thing Mr. Zangara wanted me to put out there is if any of you have relatives that participated in World War II, we'd love for you to get in touch with them so that we could write these things down and get even more information. But he's going to tell you more about who we have to speak with us today. So without further ado, Mr. Zangara.
Thanks so much. Thanks, it's great to be here. Thanks for all your enthusiasm too, appreciate that. Yeah, today we have John Billings, and he has been flying since 1938. That's next year it'll be 80 years flying. It's got to be a record or close to a record. And he was, of course, in World War II as a bomber, and also OSS missions, which was before the CIA was the OSS. And he has incredible stories through that. There was a documentary made, which he was in. And also, after the war, he flew for commercial and test pilot, long history, and then now does Angel Flight, which brings people that need to go to hospitals quickly for different kinds of treatments around the country. So he flies 2 or 3 times a week, and he's 94 years old, or he will be 94, so it's pretty miraculous. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, and I know I might not get an answer even if you know, but does anybody know what yesterday commemorated? Oh yeah. The D-Day, awesome, yeah, that's right. D-Day, yeah. Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, great. The greatest invasion in history in the United States, and of course all the Allies invaded, and France freed Europe from the Nazi oppression. We did not come as conquerors, but to liberate, and liberated Europe and later Asia. So, you know, just a few things that I could leave with you that, you know, if you could remember that, yeah, this is a World War II vet, and, you know, if you could reflect back on that from time to time. My son Orion, we had to meet the last World War I vet, and I know people that actually met Civil War vets. But if you could recall that World War II, although we think of it in Europe, in Japan, in the Pacific, that remember it happened right here too, that off the coast of the United States, the eastern coast, we lost 4,000 civilians because they used to go up and down by boat. We lost by submarine 4,000, and of course Pearl Harbor another 2,400. In Alaska we lost 500. The Japanese occupation. So just if you could reflect that World War II as well, how close total war really came here, and it doesn't seem like it's possible today, but Japan and Germany working on the atom bomb are actually very close. So, you know, we actually could have actually lost the war, and it could today be occupied by a terrible oppression, if not for men like John Billings and women that volunteered to do things that they didn't even have to do. He volunteered to fly on very dangerous missions, and we had 16 million people in the military. 300,000 were women. Of course, all races, religions, everybody was on the same page. You know, everybody wanted to save the world, which they did. So if you could reflect on how critical it really was, the United States Army was 18th in size in the world at the time, and we were behind with the atom bomb as well. So I think that's what I'd like to leave you with, and you know, if you have any questions, and that maybe later after the program, you know, you can always ask me. That'd be great. Otherwise, I'll just turn it over to whoever's next to speak. Mr. Billings.
Hello? Well, you thought this was going to be an auditorium class. It's going to be a history class. I'd like to know a little bit about you guys. How many flyers are there here? Pilots, student pilots? Good. I like to start off these things and blame my father for it all. Because on my 3rd birthday, he took me out to the local airport, bought 2 tickets to an airplane ride. Probably took less than 15 minutes, but to a 3-year-old it felt like all day almost. And that did it. And I was never the same after that. From then on, it was aviation. He also gave me my first lesson, or paid for it, I should say. He was not a pilot himself, but he was an advocate. And that was in 1938. Of course, that's last century, right? I realized that the draft was coming down on me, or my age was getting into the draft, and I had known some older people who were in the Army infantry, listened to their stories, and I knew that I didn't want to do that. It was too dangerous. So I hopped on a train, went up to Boston, and went in the recruiter's office and said, I want to be a pilot for the Army Air Corps. And of course he said, yes, just sign here. So I did. I've been more or less flying ever since. I was called to active duty in December of '42, and the very best training that a person who wants to fly happened to me, and I'm very grateful for it. That was some of my pay, and even though I was doing public service, if you want to call it, I got paid for it. Not so much in dollars at first, but in training. And then later on, when I came back, I was fortunate enough to be hired by an airline, and the pay was very, very good. And the pay stopped when I became 60 years old. The FAA doesn't allow airline pilots after 60 years old. Well, they've changed it now to 65. However, they say that that person who is over 60 but under 65 must have a co-pilot who is under 60. But now my flying is paid for again. It's paid for by big smiles and hugs at the end of the trip on our Angel flights. On the 4th, I did my 375th Angel flight. Now back to history. We were, as I say, in training, we were trained as a command pilot for a B-24, this thing. At the time, I thought it was the biggest airplane ever built, but of course it's not that big. And the training progressed to crew coordination training in Charleston, South Carolina, where I met my crew, which I would have throughout combat. And this was a new concept at the time, but it was very valuable to us because we worked as a unit, and we could depend on each other. We knew each other. We billeted with each other. And that saved our lives a number of times. We got our airplane that we were going to take overseas in Floyd Bennett Field, which no longer exists. It's as far as I know, it's a mall now. But at any rate, 3 young ladies flew the B-24 from Detroit to Long Island, and that was the airplane that we flew overseas. Flew 2 overseas, I might add. We thought we were going to keep the airplane by ourselves. No such luck. It was taken away when we first landed in Italy. I was assigned to a bomb group where we formed a formation of many airplanes and then flew over to where they were targeting that day and dropped bombs. In fact, I did participate in one mass bombing on Vienna one time where they had 1,500 airplanes and of all kinds, not just plain B-24s, but of all kinds, 1,500. And I want to tell you, if you want to feel small, just be one of 1,500 anything at the same time. A typical bombing mission, to give you an idea, a typical bombing mission, you would have a very abrupt wake-up about 4 in the morning by the sergeant. He'd come in a tent and roast us out. We'd get in our clothes, go down to mess hall, get breakfast, and then go to briefing where everybody would be lectured on what's going on that day. And then there would be a particular time when start engines would happen. And this was done by the control tower firing off a particular color flare. And everybody started up the engines, got them running, got ready, and then another different color flare would come from the tower. Now, the reason that they did that is because we were trying to keep radio silence. We didn't want to tip off the Germans that were coming. That different color one meant begin the taxi. Well, we had a piece of paper that showed our position in the formation, and we would taxi out in turn. And then the taxiways would be filled as much as it would hold, and then the final double green, which meant takeoff. The first plane would take off, the second plane would hit, the second pilot would hit his stopwatch, 10 seconds later he'd taxi into position and put up the power, and so forth, and then fly up and then make a big old circle, and at the end of the circle, coming back, they'd all be in their formation. Usually 3 planes in a diamond, and followed by 3 planes in a diamond, followed by 1 for a total of 7, and that comprised a squadron, and would fly to a point which had been pre-positioned for that particular target, and it usually was 15 to 25 miles from the bomb's strike point desired. It was for the purpose of the bomb site. The first plane in the squadron would have a bomb sight aboard, and that bombardier, once he turned on, he would strive to get visual contact with the target. And once he did, he would lock it in the bomb sight and tell me, the pilot, that he had it and I would throw a switch, and the bomb sight would guide the airplane the rest of the way on this final approach. And everybody had to get very tight, close together in order to make a good bomb pattern on the ground. And there was no deviating. Didn't matter whether the flak was coming up all over you. You couldn't deviate, because if you did, then your bombs would be no good, and you have wasted a day. And once the bombs fell out of the first plane, all the rest of the bombardiers would hit their switch so that it would go down in a mass. A B-24 could hold as much as 8,000 pounds of bombs. It could be 8 1,000-pound or 16 500-pound, depending on what they want to damage and so forth. We didn't decide that. That was decided at headquarters. The pattern on the ground was due to the fact that they flew such a tight formation. We were graded on that. You might say it's a quiz. When we got back, we got debriefed, as they called it. And at least one airplane in every squadron had a camera so that they could take pictures of the bomb strike. And we would see that. Not every one was a real good success. By and large, it did the job. But on one such mission, it was going to be just a short mission. Our base was in the middle of Italy, almost east of Rome, a little bit south of the east line to Rome. And the briefer said, well, this is going to be a quickie, and what's going to happen is that we're going to pound this little town just north of the south rim of the Po Valley. There's a ridge right across Italy, and that's where the front line was at that time. And they told us that the reason to pound that town was the ground forces were going to come over the mountain and take that town the next morning. So we went up there and pounded that town. We came back, and once they developed the pictures, they had us up to look at it, and the strike was fantastic. It really pulverized that town. And there was one little fault. One mistake was made. That was the morning that our ground forces was taking the town. We dropped our bombs on 38,000 of our ground troops. We don't like to remember those. We were never told how many casualties, if any. I can't imagine there was none. I completed 14 mass bombing missions, and I got reassigned to the OSS. That means Office of Strategic Services. And it was, now we can say it was a spy adventure, spy venture. And I completed 39 of that type. Most of them were at nighttime, some of them were at daytime, especially near the close of the European part of the war. And actually, I felt better about that because, number one, there was no final approach, if you will let me call it that, to worry about. We dropped supplies and sometimes people. behind the enemy lines. And as I said, at nighttime, in the mountains, Austria, North Italy, Yugoslavia, Romania, and in order to make our trip safer, we flew in the valleys of the Alps at nighttime. And you might think that's a bad thing, but it was found that if we breathe from the very beginning, if we breathe 100% oxygen for the whole mission, our eyesight got better. And it really did. I remember one time we were flying along and everything was black, and somebody on the ground lit a cigarette, and you could see the whole compound just from the match. So we could see where we were going, and our navigation was very good. By the way, my crew consisted of 10, counting myself, members. Because I was the pilot and co-pilot, flight engineer who served as the top turret gunner as well, a navigator who was rated as a gunner, a bombardier who was also rated as a gunner, and a nose turret gunner, a tail turret gunner, and in the bomb group there was a bottom turret that was extended once we were off the ground, extended below the airplane, and he could go in any direction from shooting sideways, front, back, and down. And there were 2 gunners that used a gun each side of the waist of the airplane, between the wing and the tail. I don't know if you can see it very well. They were fantastic in my crew, and they all got me home. The airplane was fantastic. It got me home every time. I was very fortunate. We didn't get hit by anything other than small arms. We lost an oil cooler one time because a bullet went through it and all the oil leaked out. But by and large, something happened.
That's all right, you can keep on.
That's okay. There's all kinds of war stories that you can read about, and it sounds like we were under stress 100% of the time, and that's not really so. We had days that we didn't fly, and we could do practically what we wanted. And my bombardier and I, of the crew, we were the ones like to do target shooting and hunting before, and we continued to do that. In fact, they would give us all the ammunition we wanted to because they wanted everybody to be good at shooting. Anybody go hunting or yeah, shooting? Well, my bombardier, his hobby before coming to the war was taxidermy. So he asked me one day, let's go out in the field and I'll take my carbine and shoot a magpie, and then I'll bring it home and I'll mount it. We'll have a pet magpie in the tent. Well, I didn't say anything out loud, but a magpie is about the size of a crow, and a carbine shoots 30 caliber one projectile. And I thought, okay, I like to go walking anyway, so we went out, and we saw one. It had to be about 75 yards away, and he was on a branch. And magpie, if you don't know, it's a European mockingbird. And he was out there going through his repertoire of all his songs, and Dick sat down in a sitting position with the knees and the gun. You target shooters probably know what that means. And he very slowly squeezed the trigger, and bird dropped. My job was to stand there and fixate on the place it dropped, because the grass was it was wild grass, a foot high at least. So he ran down, and I gave him, right, left, and pretty soon he picked it up. So I went down. Well, he wasn't dead. The bird was looking at us, and Dick says, well, he's really not hurt that bad, my mighty hunter. And he says, you have any sulfonilamide? And that used to be a wonder drug back in World War II. It's a powder that you put on a wound, and it would supposedly heal very fast. Well, we put a little on it. What happened was the bullet went right through the joint of a wing, so we only had a half a wing on one side. And sure enough, I put it in there, and the bleeding stopped. Now, Dick, what are you going to do with this? He says, well, he's probably hungry. So we took him back to the tent, and of course they like to eat bugs and everything. They're literally a meat eater. So we broke out one of the sea rations, and they had this, if you don't know, the sea ration was supposed to be one meal, and it was very compact, and I had a little tin can about the size of a pate can that had mystery meat in it most of the time, and a little wind-up type opener. And we opened it up, put it down on the tent floor, and the bird scarfed it up. He loved that. All of a sudden, this bird realizes that we are his savior. And he stayed around. He attempted to fly, but of course it didn't work. And he'd get off the ground maybe a foot and then flop. He finally accepted that, and he walked sideways up the ridge of the tent, a pyramidal tent that we stayed in, and he walked sideways up, being the top of our tent, and he singing away. And we didn't know it was the OSS, by the way. The orders said that we were reassigned to the 885 Heavy Special Bombardment Squadron. We never again dropped a bomb. So they had B-24s, they were modified, the belly turret was removed, and the space was walled in with nice smooth metal so that it didn't catch on anything, and it made a well. And this is where the people who we were going to drop out would sit, and then at proper time they'd be tapped and then go straight down. It was much better than going out a door sideways, much better for them. And the airplane was painted gloss black and polished. In fact, we had at least every month, maybe sooner, we had Simonized parties where the crew, all of us, would get out and polish the outside. And the reason for that is, you've probably seen the old World War II, like this airplane, painted olive drab, which is a kind of a flat paint and irregular. But they're flying in the daytime. They don't have to worry about that. We were flying at night, and the searchlights would look for us. The irregular olive drab was so irregular that it would catch every piece of light and every part of that airplane, and would show up for the clean light operators to keep the light on you so the gunners could shoot it. The gloss, it would only be a glint, because unless it was exactly in the return angle, you couldn't see it, even though the light was there. And that was to help us keep out of sight. Now, I got a question. Has anybody heard of the Green Up mission of the OSS? Okay, good, I'll tell you. Did I see a hand over there? The Green Up mission, I first got to tell you why. Every mission we did had a code name. In fact, they still do that. They even name wars code names now. But, and it really doesn't have anything to do with anything except tagging that mission. So you could talk about it and yet not talk about it. And it was to bring a three-man team to a lake that was frozen over. This was in February of 1945. And brought the team and their supplies on this frozen lake at 10,000 feet above sea level, south of Innsbruck, Austria. Anybody know where Innsbruck is? There is a river that flows through Austria, and it's the Inn River. And one of the first bridges ever put permanently across the river was at that location, so they call it the Hinge Bridge, but they pronounce it Innsbruck. And they were the team was supposed to somehow get information of how they are transporting munitions, supplies, and everything down through the Brenner Pass to Italy. Well, this mission was a little different than the rest. As always, at a specific time, we started our engines, checked them out, taxied to the end of the runway where we waited. And in due time, a non-window panel truck arrived under the wing. And of course, from a cockpit, we wouldn't see this at all. But the three-man team and the dispatcher would get out and go to the back end of the airplane, and then the truck would drive away, and somebody would come around in eyesight of me and say it's okay to take off. And we went on our mission. And we would normally never see these people at all. And that's good, because it was supposed to be a secret anyway. We weren't supposed to learn the names of them. In fact, they were called, everybody was called Joe, except one time it had to be Josephine. The people that were going out of our airplane and not coming back home were Joes. we were maybe less than 2 hours away from base toward the target point, and radio operator got a message related to me. It said, in the event of no reception, that means you couldn't see it, or that sort of thing. Any reason that you couldn't go. Do not come home and go to XYZ base. And sure enough, we get up there, and clouds over the Alps where the lake was supposed to be. Navigator said it's right down there. Couldn't see a thing. So we went there. And the next morning, of course, we went to Chow Line, and we met the 4 people. And the team leader was Fred Mayer. He was a German-born, he was born in the Black Forest area of Germany to Jewish parents. His father was a diplomat in the hierarchy of the German government, and they were Jewish. The second person was looked to me younger than you guys right now, and I'm not sure that I would have given him middle school. He looked so young, and he was a Dutch boy. He was one of 2 twins that their parents managed to get them to Amsterdam and on a boat and sailed for America before the parents were captured and never heard from again. And the third man was a current Austrian, the equivalent of a United States captain would be in the Army. And he was in the Wehrmacht. And he intentionally got too close to the front lines and got captured. And they found him, Fred did, found him in the prisoner of war camp in southern Italy and asked him to help on the mission. So he provided names of people who were sympathetic to our cause, not to the Nazi cause. And so we got to know them a little bit. And in order to hurry this up a little bit, I'll skip over. There's 3 days, well, a total of 5 days before we actually dropped them out because of weather. And all you have to do is Google Green Up Mission, and that'll provide you with what they did on the ground. Fred is a remarkable man, was a remarkable man. I always chided him because he was had a failure of genes because he didn't have any fear gene. The OSS headquarters in Barrie wanted to give him a forged document for so that he could get away with things when he was doing his spying stuff. Fred said, "No, I don't want it." They argued. He says, "You can give it to me, but I'll throw it away." He says, "I'll handle it." And by luck, years later, in the mid-60s, I found Fred was living less than 100 miles from where I was then living. And we got back together. We were close ever since. He died about a year ago in April. The way he handled it is the first night he was in Innsbruck, after curfew, he went down the middle of the street looking for a Nazi GI. He saw one way up ahead, and he yelled and screamed and hollered and ran toward him. And he says, "I need help. I've been robbed. I have nothing." He turned his pockets inside, no money. They took everything. They took all my papers. And this big Nazi 6-footer put his arm around Fred, who was about 5'5", and a Jew, and said, "Calm down, come with me, I'll help you." So he took him to the Innsbruck headquarters building and photographed him and fingerprinted him. He didn't have false ID. He had the real thing. Now, let me ask you, do you have any questions about the Covert War? Or have you any questions of me? No? Well, that's good. I might not have known the answer.
First off, thank you for the service. And at some point, were you ever almost killed? He said thank you for your service, and were you at any point where you were close to being killed?
Yes, and thank you. Well, one time on a bombing mission, they told us it was going to be a milk run, and that it's not going to be any problem at all because we will be bombing on a radar lead plane, and so they can't see you. And even if they could see you, they only have 8 guns that can reach altitude. Well, we got up there and we followed the leader, and sure enough, the valley was fogged in where we were bombing. Couldn't see a thing, but we saw the squadron ahead of us, and there was 8 bursts, and they went right through the formation. Airplanes went right and left, and we got up to it, and the first volley that hit my squadron, 2 more planes left, and then another volley, got another one, and that, you can understand, this is pretty close, right? And the formation kind of opened up, and I noticed that too. So I said, "Okay, we got to get back into formation, tight." So the way that you do that, I use my hands for talking. The way you do that in formation is to drop the wing toward the airplane you want to get closer to, and then raise it slightly when you get there. So you have to really put high-power eyes on that other airplane, otherwise you're going to bump right into it. Well, just at the point where I was stopping the movement, a shell came down up and hit that airplane in the bomb bay, and of course, at that stage, all the bombs were armed, and they all went off too. And it was a blinding flash, like the old-fashioned camera flash bulbs. Your vision goes away a little, and when it came back, all I saw was little confetti pieces of that airplane. And about that time, we were in a position to release our bombs and get out of the way, and came home. When I looked at the outside of an airplane, on that side, there were little pieces of his aluminum welded into our side of the airplane. That was close enough.
Any other questions?
I see a hand.
It's too so greedy.
What was it like flying in a plane with 8,000 pounds of explosives behind you?
Well, until the bombardier goes back through the airplane, the bomb bay, and pulls the pins out, it's just so much cargo. They can't go off, theoretically. And so you don't think about it. And when we get close to the target, that's when he goes back and pulls the pins, gets them ready. And at that time, you don't have time to think about it.
Any other questions? Jacob, what you got? Did the bird? The bird. They want to know about the bird. Your mask.
He was still there when we left that base. And there was no question which bird was doing that.
Okay, Jose. Please be quiet. What?
Say again?
He just said he did a mission on.
Somebody relay that for me.
He said, when was the last time you flew as a pilot? And I
As
said,
a pilot?
yeah, that would be a couple days ago, right? Yeah, June 4th. Do you want to spend have enough time to look up? We'll take one more question. Or, well, please be quiet. We don't have time for questions if you guys are going to start talking. Adam, did you name the bird? Was there? Did you make a name for the magpie?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't remember anyway.
Did you ever have to evacuate an airplane or jump out?
No, thank you. I'm not going to play. I don't
Be quiet. You can't
believe
get questions.
in leaving a perfectly good airplane just to jump out and float down. Okay?
Wait.
What's your biggest fear when flying?
Oh my God.
You want to know what my biggest fear of flying? I don't have any. And
Other than the B-24, what's your favorite airplane to fly? What's your favorite airplane to fly? What was your favorite airplane to pilot?
favorite all-time airplane?
That you piloted?
DC-9.
Can you describe what a DC-9 is?
Oh, a DC-9 was made by Douglas Aircraft Corporation, had 2 jet engines, and they made them in different sizes all the way up to about 125 seats, and then McDonnell Douglas purchased that line, and they continued, and they called them MD-80s, MD-90s, and so forth. And then they decided to stick with military airplanes and sold that off to Boeing, and now a DC-9 is named the Boeing 717.
Ms. Clark? In the back, what did you do for holidays during the war? So during the war, what did you do for things like Christmas and Thanksgiving?
What did you do for holidays during the war? How did you celebrate holidays during?
Well, don't remember any celebration. However, the New Year's Eve of 44 to 45, I thought that I would make a noise. I was in the OSS at the time, and we were all issued a 45 sidearm, and it makes a noise. And I had my watch, and I very carefully set it, so I'm looking at the second going on, and I was at the back of the billet, and I had my finger on the trigger, and it was up in the air, and it was 58, 59, and somebody in my hearing range fired off a machine gun. I said, oh. So I got preempted, and no, we didn't have anything like holidays in combat. So sure. Yeah, okay. You want to know?
Thank you, John. Wow. Incredible. Okay, fantastic. All right, my name is Steve Craven, and I am. Hello. Let's see. How many hours do you have before you can get out of here? It's what, Friday? Is Friday the last day? Got a countdown clock. Okay, my name is Steve Craven. I'm chairman of Angel Flight Mid-Atlantic, and we are a volunteer pilot group that provides free transportation for financially challenged patients that have to travel long distance for medical care. Typically what we do is provide transportation for cancer patients, children going to Shriners hospitals, etc. People that cannot obtain their surgeries or medical treatment locally, and they have to travel long distance, but they can't afford the transportation. Myself, I'm an Angel Flight pilot. John, of course, is. John, at his age, is the senior Angel Flight pilot in the country. And I just want to let you know also that John is truly a hero, not only from his World War II service, but as he stated, he has flown 375 flights in his airplane. He owns a Cessna. He's a high-wing guy, okay? I'm a low-wing guy. I'm a Piper guy, okay? So, and then there's Nevin Showman is John's co-pilot, right seat. But John is an instrument-rated pilot, commercial pilot. He has a current medical. In other words, he is legal to fly by the FAA, and he is almost 94 years old. So that is unbelievable. So I want to encourage you about aviation. Now, John, of course, was trained by the Army Air Corps. He went on to have an airline career. He retired from Eastern Airlines as a captain in DC-9. And those of you that have interest in this should pursue it, because aviation is a tremendous career. And especially moving forward, even right now, there's a shortage of pilots. And it can be very, very rewarding, as John will tell you. And then also, too, the volunteer part of aviation. Myself, and John and Nevin, there are 4,000 of us nationwide. Most of us own our own aircraft. I have a Piper Saratoga that's based at Leesburg. John has a Cessna Cutlass that's based at Luray Caverns Airport. And so, together, nationwide, We help over 30,000 patients a year, and there's never a charge for what we do. And the pilots pay all the expenses. The FAA will not allow us to be reimbursed. So from that standpoint, general aviation, as it's called, really gives back to the country, to the community. But I really want to encourage you to look into an aviation career. There are so many colleges that have tremendous programs. Liberty University down in Lynchburg has one of the best flight schools in the country. So from that standpoint, I just want to thank you for your time. This is a wonderful class. I'm really amazed how you paid attention and to John and the interest that you have in the history of our country. But John really is a true hero. Without men and women like that, we wouldn't be here today.
So I'm really proud of you. Thank you so much for your respect and attention.